Hi everybody, my name is David Michelson and I am one of the chief petitioners for the IP28 campaign. I wanted to make a video about donating to our campaign, and initially it was going to be a shorter social media video, and after talking about it with someone else, I started reflecting more on what the purpose of the video was, and I wanted to make something that was convincing or compelling, that really laid out all of the reasons why I think donating to the campaign would be helpful and cost effective and meet our needs. I also was reflecting on the criticism of, in our modern day, so much media is made to be shorter and shorter, and as an educator in a past life, so to speak, I am very aware of the content we're consuming getting shorter and shorter and the effects that might be contributing, or the effects that might be having on children and all of us, to be quite honest. And not wanting to contribute by creating more media that's also really just trying to grab a short little bit of your attention. So I wanted to make instead a longer video that I think is more compelling and just overall enjoyable to make. So that's the purpose of this. So I am going to walk through some reasons why I think donating to the campaign is worth investing in, why the campaign is worth investing in. And briefly, very briefly, I want to talk about what the campaign is in case you have never heard of it before and you're coming to this video totally new. The IP28 campaign, IP stands for Initiative Petition. 28 means we were the 28th initiative petition submitted for the 2026 election cycle in Oregon. So we're a proposed ballot measure in Oregon. And if passed, it would ban the slaughter, hunting, experimentation, and breeding of animals statewide. So it's a very radical animal rights initiative, radical in the sense that it gets to the root of the problem. The way that the initiative works is it extends the exact same animal cruelty protections that already exist for our companion animals to animals on farms, research labs, rodeos, and out in the wild. To give an example of this, we have a law in Oregon against animal abuse, and animal abuse is defined as the intentional, knowing, and reckless injury of an animal. That seems like a pretty common sense definition. If you intentionally injure someone, that would legally constitute abuse. But of course, we intentionally injure them when we slaughter them, hunt them, experiment on them, etc. The reason those are not considered crimes under state law is there's another section of Oregon state law that says the following activities are all exempt from our cruelty laws. And it lays out exemptions for slaughter, hunting, experimentation, entertainment, training techniques, wildlife management, transportation of animals. The initiative would remove those exemptions so that across the board, all animals have that same protection from the intentional, knowing, and reckless injury of them. There would be two exceptions that remain, one that's already in state law for veterinary practices, and another would be created for self-defense. The reason that those two exceptions are left in has to do with intention, because we think intention matters. All the other exceptions for slaughtering, for hunting, experimentation, entertainment, those are all exceptions to allow us to use animals in a way that involves injury without being a crime. The veterinary exception is, at least at the root, intended, I believe, to help the animal. So it would protect things like spaying, neutering, and euthanasia, vet-administered euthanasia in particular, or any other veterinary practice that would involve injuring an animal. The self-defense exception, although the intention in that case isn't to help that particular animal, the intention is not to do harm to that animal. The intention is to protect oneself. And so that's why those two exceptions exist, or would remain if this were to pass. Like I said, pretty radical initiative. I also want to talk briefly about why I support this kind of campaign in general, before getting into the concrete arguments for why I think donating is so helpful and effective, cost-effective. I've mentioned a lot of these before, and definitely go to our website, yesonip28.org, to read more about them in our About section. And also, there's going to be a blog post uploaded pretty soon, if not already there at the time of this uploading, that kind of explains more about why I believe in this strategy. But really quick, one of the inspirations is the women's suffrage movement. So in Oregon in particular, women won the right to vote prior to the 19th Amendment using the ballot initiative process, but only after being voted on in 6 election cycles. So it was voted down 5 times before it finally passed. We're trying to do a similar strategy with the animal rights movement. We know putting this on the ballot in 2026, it's really unlikely that it's going to pass the first time through. We're aware of that. We're not naive. But we think that getting it on the ballot will allow us to get it on the ballot again in other states, really create something that the movement can galvanize around, make it a very clear political ask. Also, it forces people to envision what this world would look like if they're actually mailed a ballot that says, hey, do you want to vote to end animal exploitation? People will start taking it more seriously, I think. So we're inspired by that tactic of using the ballot initiative process. Also, very inspired by folks like William Lloyd Garrison, who advocated an immediatist position when it came to the abolition of slavery. The argument being, rather than a gradualist approach, an immediatist approach will make it more likely to happen in our lifetime, just as slavery abolition happened in William Lloyd Garrison's lifetime. I really think that this helps move the conversation forward, and is also a more authentic approach, which I'll talk again a little bit about later on. The blog post that I mentioned briefly is actually going to be focused on Rosa Luxemburg, the next person on this short checklist. She had an essay, Reform or Revolution, talks about those 2 strategies, and the blog will talk more about why I think the revolutionary approach is so helpful. And another inspiration that actually comes up in that, Gustav Landauer, not to throw a bunch of names at you, but one of my favorite quotes from him is, "You cannot awaken someone if you do not approach them as if they were not sleeping." So we are asking people to ban killing animals, and we hope that by making that really clear request and talking very explicitly about the world that we want, we will awaken in others a recognition of animals and awaken a consciousness about animals that might be currently dormant, but that would only come about and to arise again if we really, if we talk to them as if this is a normal ask, because we want to normalize it. We want to normalize this idea of moving away from slaughter, hunting, experimentation, etc., rather than have the actual violence be what's so normalized. And the very last inspiration I'll mention here, nonviolent communication. For me, this campaign really helps meet needs of understanding, affection, and identity. And what I mean by that, I want others to understand my perspective when it comes to animal rights. I think going about the campaign in this way is being vulnerable and honest with others in such a way that they're more likely to actually ask me questions and understand where I'm coming from. I think it's going to generate a lot of conversations. I think it's also helpful because we are so ideologically consistent. It's easier for the public to understand where we're coming from. I think some other strategies run the risk of contributing to a mistrust or misunderstanding of others if we're not totally clear and honest with what we want. Affection is sort of an umbrella category. I think by being honest, we're also meeting others' needs for respect. They want us to tell them what we really want. I think most people do want a level of honesty with each other. And so we're a very transparent campaign. We're a very honest campaign. And in my mind, that meets my need to show affection for others by meeting their need for respect in that way. And then identity, I think that I've never really done something that is so authentic to me. This really is an embodiment of what I want, and being able to work on that has just been a great need. So that's why I support this campaign, and why I think others also support this campaign, why we have volunteers, why we have paid petitioners. But I want to actually spend the most amount of time on this video not trying to convince you to support the campaign in a general sense, which I think is usually when I bring up those arguments. I want to make a compelling video as to why you should donate, or not should, why you would want, why it would meet your needs to donate to this campaign. And in particular, we're asking for monthly donors if you can, for specific reasons, which I'll go into. And I did personally sign up to be a monthly donor, $15 a month. Very excited. Any amount that you can is great through our website. One of the reasons why we're trying to push for more grassroots donors and grassroots fundraising is it would diversify our funding sources. So I'll go into more detail how much money we've already raised. a lot of that, the bulk of that, has been from really a foundation and one private individual, the vast majority, and we'll break that down. I want to draw the analogy to petitioning because we actually see a really similar thing. So there's going to be some data here for folks who are interested. When we are out collecting signatures, so far we've collected over 30,000, and this is how it's distributed in our pie chart. And so you can actually see right now 6 people contribute about half of our signatures, and the other half is contributed by the remaining however many people this is. Count of 50. So that is pretty typical. And I will say in the past, we've done this campaign. We started in 2020 for the 2022 election cycle, then the 2024. This is our 3rd iteration of this. It's certainly the one that's been most successful. We've kind of built on each one. Early on, there was like one person that was contributing half of the signatures. In the second campaign, there was, I think, 3 people contributing half of the signatures. So the fact that we have 6, I think, is actually positive. When I've talked with other ballot initiative campaigns, like Honest Elections in Oregon, if you're in Oregon, that name might sound familiar. You might have signed the petition. Very similar thing, where just 4 or 5 people were contributing most of their signatures. There are just some people who go out a lot and are really skilled at gathering signatures. The point I'm trying to make, though, right now, our funding is really just coming, I think, definitely more than half from one person, and then another really good chunk from a second person. And if we can shift that a little bit, that helps, because if one person decides they don't want to fund us anymore, we're not done, right? Same with signature gathering. We don't want it all to fall on one person. I think it also increases the psychological burden on that individual, whether they're a petitioner or a donor. It helps to see some solidarity and comradeship in this. And grassroots donating can contribute a really large amount. So if you look at just everyone who has done less than 2% of the signatures, and you add up all their contributions, that's over 20%, which is more contribution in this case than our highest petitioner, right? 20% is a huge chunk. So the grassroots donations really can help, and it doesn't require that many. We are right now trying to get, I would say, about $150,000 more in order to have, a pretty strong shot at making sure we qualify. That funding, I'll talk a little bit about our cost per signature numbers and where that comes from. But given what we've raised so far, I think $150,000 would be enough to get on the ballot. That money is a lot for one individual, but it's not a huge amount when you have it diversified over a larger group of people. So that is one of the reasons we want to spread out, get more solidarity, get more people involved. The other reason is that this could indicate a measure. The more donors we have, the more monthly donors, I think, would in particular be really powerful. Could show a level of community support among the animal rights community, among the Oregon community. This is a great time to specify that you do not have to be in Oregon to donate. You can donate actually anywhere in the world. Because this is not a political candidate, it is not forbidden to take donations from foreign nationals. So anyone is able to donate. If you are an animal rights person and want to see this happen and support this message, please do consider donating. For those who might be concerned, well, taking money from wherever might be harmful influence, the way I would reassure that is this initiative has already been written. It's not going to change for the 2026 election cycle. And we've been very consistent all 3 election cycles. In fact, the core of it has stayed the same. We've just added more things to it. And usually our opposition doesn't like the thing. It's not compromises is what I'm trying to say. So this initiative already exists. We're a grassroots group based in Portland largely, but we have a very large team in Eugene as well, contributing a huge number of signatures. Very grateful that we have that base. We're getting more and more people in Corvallis. We have someone even down in Southern Oregon right now, hoping to kind of continue to branch out. But anyway, anyone in Oregon or anyone in or out of Oregon can donate, so please do consider it. This would give confidence to donors. If I can, tell someone, hey, we have this number of monthly donors, I think that helps indicate that there is a show of support. We'd also be able to project how much money we're likely to raise over the course of the election cycle. So that's another reason why the monthly donation helps. Of course, any donation is great, but if you're able to be a monthly donor, I do highly request it. Would appreciate it. So what does the funding go towards? We are a very transparent campaign, so let's get into this. In this election cycle for the 2024, or sorry, this is wrong, for the 2026 campaign, oh, I did write that correctly. Here we go, let me indicate this. IP28 for 2026, to get on that election cycle, we've raised $83,237.56. $58,000 of that came from our prior campaign, so Initiative Petition 3, which was launched for the 2024 election cycle. Unfortunately, we did not qualify for that election cycle, and we intentionally paused August of 2023 because we didn't seem like we were getting on track to qualify. In Oregon, money that's raised by a petition committee, if that petition committee no longer continues, if that election cycle is over, they can donate that money to another petition committee. So that any money we raised from previous cycles, whatever was left, we transferred to this election cycle. To give some background for IP3, so we had raised a total of $134,715.35. We spent $76,530 during that election cycle. We collected a little under 40,000 signatures. And by August, going into really actually September, getting into the winter, we were concerned that we were not able to qualify because we weren't collecting signatures fast enough. We are new to this. No one on this team is very experienced in managing a petitioning organization. So we were learning a lot of things about it. And the concern was if we got close to qualifying but just missed it, then we'd be out of money and we'd have to restart from scratch. And since we had funding left and we had buy-in from other people who would support a future campaign, we decided, why don't we pause so that we could start fresh in 2024 for the 2026 cycle, because Oregon is one of the few states that allows up to 2 full years to collect signatures. And at the time when we decided to pause, we actually only had less than a year left, much less, because we had the winter and then we had half of one summer. We thought, okay, let's be strategic. I'm pretty risk averse personally. I want to do something that has a much less risk, much more certainty. Let's pause, take what we have, what we've learned, use the remaining funds, try for 2026. And that's what we did. We started this past July to collect for July of 2026 deadline. We have collected over 30,000 signatures so far. And actually, I can get into this trajectory. So this is our current data. So we started in July. 10th was, I guess, the first day of actual petitioning. And since then, we've been doing pretty great. We got 10,000 all 3 months of July, August, and September. We are intentionally planning on slowing down a bit during the winter and are hoping that we can raise funds over the winter to ramp things up a lot in spring and summer of 2025. Our hope is actually to finish and qualify early if we can, maybe by the end of next year, which would give us almost 11 months before the election to campaign. I think that would it would be a huge opportunity, a huge win. So that's our goal, where we're trying to push the fundraising now while things are slowing down so that we can ramp back up in the spring. To give a quick sense of our timeline, so like I said, we've gotten 10,000 in each of these 3 months. We started with about 2,000. That's why it says 32 here. Which were done as part of a sponsorship signature process, whole other conversation, but essentially we started with 2,000 already. I'm going to try to get 8,000 in October, slow down to 2,500 over these winter months, and then start ramping back up in spring, not maybe full capacity, but start. And then we're hoping to actually exceed where we've been at. And knowing from all the data we've been collecting, the number of paid petitioners, how it correlates the number of people out, it is really just a time game. The more people who are out, the more we collect signatures. We have a sense of now how many people we need to have hired by day one, essentially. And we have more processes in place to maintain that hiring, because there is turnover for petitioners. It can be a really tiring job, and we're more prepared to really ramp that up. So our goal, like I said, would be to qualify maybe even by the end of next October, which would be awesome. And I have, by comparison, the Oregon Rebate is a campaign that just qualified for this election cycle 2024, and they were, if we are able to qualify by next October, they'll have been running for the same length of time that we have. And I think that's pretty inspiring. They're a similar organization in that they were started by a couple of friends. They eventually, during the midway through the second or third attempt, they attracted some funding to help pay for paid petitioners. They were able to ramp up operations. We've been in communication with them. It's, I think, a good model for us that we're trying to reflect on. So yeah, we've raised $83,000. 25,000 of that is new funding since the start of this current election cycle, compared to, again, the 58,000 that was rolled over. We've spent 63,000 of that so far, and like I said, we've collected a little over, I think we're at like 33,000 signatures right now. And by the time we finish spending about 80,000 with a little bit left over, hopefully we'll be at 40,000 signatures. You might be wondering what we spent this money on, and briefly, happy to share sort of a breakdown. It's actually pretty simple. 89% of our budget goes towards wages and taxes. That's paying for the paid petitioners. By and large, these are animal rights activists. We do have a couple people who are new to advocating for animal rights, but are comfortable and inspired by the petition enough to join the team. We are a pretty large now animal rights organization in Oregon, which is great. And any more funding we get just helps go towards that. 2.8% is background checks, which is just a requirement for hiring. So again, another big chunk, relatively speaking, is part of the hiring process. Payroll fees, hiring process, printing, that includes both like promotional materials, table covers, business cards, flyers, more so than, I mean, we actually spend very little on paper and ink. The printer, we print everything ourselves, and it's just very nice. Signature verification is a process we go through. We spend some money on that, getting the voter database. And you can see kind of ranked here. After that, we have postage, vendor fees, job posts, petitioning supplies. We did host one training event at a venue that we paid to reserve. Transportation, some transportation reimbursements. Occasionally we will do that. Most petitioners stay within their sort of metro area, but occasionally we will ask people to go and get some big event and pay for the cost of gas and stuff like that, or transit tickets. We're very pro-transit on this campaign. Occasionally food, very rarely, but occasionally we'll spend money on food for some event. Software, could be like editing software, what have you. Onboarding, I forget exactly what this hiring line item was. Website, banking fee, very small percent. Vast majority of the money is going towards paying the people who are on the campaign, getting the job done. One of the ways that we have been so cost effective is because the only people being paid by those wages are the petitioners, just to make that really clear. So myself, I volunteer my time. I have a separate, part-time job that I use to make a living in the world that we're in. The other chief petitioners volunteer their time for the campaign. We have a lot of other volunteers who have taken on organizing, like responsibility, specific tasks that they have ownership of. So we are, our fundraising team are all volunteers, at least for the time that they spend, because sometimes paid petitioners will also volunteer time aside from that to help out, which has been really great. But the money is just going towards paid petitioning. That is how we're able to qualify with a pretty short budget. One thing, again, in the line of transparency, there is a distinction between Yes On IP28, which is largely what I think I've been referencing so far, and EAC, which stands for End Animal Cruelty. If you're a paid petitioner, you're familiar with that name because that's officially the employer of our paid petitioners. End Animal Cruelty is a 501c4, and it essentially acts as our contractor. So all money gets donated to the campaign, Yes On IP28. And we do that because we believe it's following the transparency rules around campaign donations for the state of Oregon. It is against the rules to donate in a false name or to try to hide who is donating to the campaign. And so we make sure all donations go to the IP28 campaign, so that way we can comply with all those reporting requirements. And then the campaign, or the petition committee, Yes on IP28, then gives money to End Animal Cruelty to pay for the wages and whatever other costs are specifically associated with paid petitioning. And you can look up both of these organizations. So the Yes on IP28 campaign is a petition committee. You can go to the Secretary of State's website and find us if you go to 2026, because that's the year of the election cycle, not the current year, and we're 28. So if you go down to 28, you can click submit. And what's great, so Yes on IP28, we're here. You can look at account summary. You can look to see what our total money coming in is, what our total money going out is. And you can also look at the campaign finance activity, the specific expenditures that have been made. And you'll see End Animal Cruelty receives 10,000 every so often, 10,000, 10,000. That's us moving money over to pay for our paid petitioners. All of our donations are on here. So this is, again, a very transparent campaign. People have in the past said that we were funded by George Soros or Bill Gates, and I kind of laugh because I would happily take their money, but they have not donated. So if they did, they would be on there. And also we would have qualified last election cycle. So you could also search End Animal Cruelty here, and it's just a different entity. Oh, okay, well, the website's down for maintenance, but if you try it again later, it'll come up. Why we are cost effective. So the last, or in the next 4 minutes, I want to try to make some good arguments for why this is a very cost effective use of money. Our cost per signature, $1.72. Now what this number in particular looks at is how much money have we spent on paid petitioners and how many total signatures have we collected. So divide those numbers, you get $1.72 per signature. This takes into account our volunteer signatures, and they have so far volunteered 5,152 signatures, which is a little bit more than our top petitioner, but it is a smaller contribution, so about 15%, I think, or so. Yeah, it would be about a little over 15% of our signatures have been from volunteers. That helps drive our cost down as well. If you looked at just the cost per signature for paid petitioners, it goes up a little bit, $2.04. Still really cost efficient. And then we have this number here, the CPRS in quotes, because this is trying to match what Ballotopedia collects. So they collect something called the cost per required signature, which is a comparison of the amount of money spent on the petition drive, so the overall petitioning campaign, to the number of signatures that were required to make it on the ballot. And in 2023, the average was $9. In 2022, the average was $12.97. At the peak in 2022 was $25 per signature. So what we did here, or what I did here real quick, was just see how much money have we spent on the whole campaign, and then look at how many signatures we've collected, divide those numbers, $1.88, roughly speaking. As roughly as a comparison. I know it's not quite the same measure that they have, but compared, super cost efficient. And if you look at Oregon in particular, because maybe it's just a state difference, and there is to some extent a state difference, you can look at Oregon, their average, $5.14. I don't know exactly what year this is actually, but $5.14 was their average. So we are still much more cost efficient. And then I chalk that up to two things. One is our paid petitioners, by and large, are very passionate about what they're doing. They're very mindful of how they're spending their time because they care so much about the cause, and it's not just any job, so to speak. They want to do a good job. They want to make sure that the shifts that they're scheduling, which they have a lot of autonomy to self-schedule their shifts and to pick the times they work and all of those great things. They are also willing to say, oh, this spot is not good. Maybe I'll try again another time. And that kind of, it does introduce a little bit of instability or variability in their schedule. And because I think they're willing to care enough about the cause that they can take on that burden. They're willing to take on that burden. Oh, and the second part is that we have volunteers that also do collect signatures. Most campaigns who are paying for petitioners don't have volunteers, maybe any or not that many of them. And I think we have a good sizable amount, which we are hoping to increase still. And the other frame in which this is cost effective, so if we get on the ballot, there are about 3 million registered voters in Oregon. They would all be mailed to their home or mailbox, mailing address or whatever, a ballot that says, do you want to vote to criminalize breeding animals, intentionally injuring or killing them, including for food, hunting, fishing, right? They're going to be asked on paper, do you want to ban killing animals? If we wanted to mail 3 million people any type of animal rights propaganda, any animal rights literature, let's look at what that might cost, right? So stamps alone, 73 cents per stamp for 3 million people comes out to $2.19 million. And we'd get it for no additional cost other than qualifying for the ballot, right? That doesn't include the cost, by the way, of the actual literature itself, doesn't include the cost of the envelopes themselves. So, I mean, this would be millions of dollars, more than $2 million probably. Huge amount of money that we would save. And if that didn't sway you, we don't have good data on how many people would support ending animal agriculture and ending animal exploitation more generally, because it's more than just agriculture. We don't have good data on that. It would cost a lot of money to poll 3 million people. And just to give an estimate of that, I found this YouGov survey calculator. We get a general population, no targeting, and we just ask one question, right? Do you support banning the killing of animals? It only goes up to 2,000. After that, it says speak to sales. 2,000 people would be $3,000. 1,000 people is 1,500. So it looks pretty linear to me. Seems about $1.50 per person. So again, if we were going to poll that many people, it'd be $4.5 million. We'd get that for no additional cost. So even if you are maybe not fully convinced that this initiative is the way to go, at the very least, if you think that it would be worth a poll of 3 million people, if you think it would be worth mailing 3 million people some really, hopefully, kind of shocking question to them, something that wakes them up a little bit towards animal rights, animal liberation, then, I don't know, is that not cost effective? I think so. And of course, free media. This would get so much media attention given the nature of the campaign. I think it would get international coverage, to be quite honest. I can't quantify how much money that would normally cost to be able to speak to so many people. And if you find either the message of the campaign compelling, or if you've ever found me compelling, if you've maybe read the blog post or you've heard me talk at other places, or you know me personally and you think that it might be compelling just for more people to hear me talk about the campaign, a lot of free media would come from donating so that we qualify for the ballot. And I want to end with a focus, those are the short term, so to speak, medium term maybe, reasons for donating. We do hope that this becomes, and you can probably hear the plane above me. I'm reminded of a monk who uses the sounds of a helicopter as a bell of mindfulness. I feel like I'm not doing him quite diligence in staying silent until it's gone, but anyway. We do hope that this campaign is part of a long-term struggle for animal liberation. We don't want to just get it on the ballot once and be done. We want to get it on the ballot this time, maybe multiple election cycles, hopefully in other states like I shared earlier. What that path will look like will probably vary depending on the reaction we get from the public, right? And we don't want to have too concrete of plans because we want to be open to that ambiguity, to those possibilities, while still being prepared. So we're documenting everything we're doing now. We're collecting data on the petitioning process, all the locations we've been to. We're not only keeping track of them, we're ranking them by signature rate. We're keeping track of which pitch is most effective to people. We are building connections with others. We want to create a foundation that can successfully do this kind of campaign, both in Oregon multiple times and in other states, and document all of that so that it's a resource for people. I really do believe that this will accelerate the animal rights movement by asking for what we want now. The final thing I want to end with is I want people to donate because they see how this would meet their needs, your needs, in the present moment. And some of those needs might be participation, creation, protection, affection, understanding. What I mean by that, participation. This is a way you could participate in this movement. If you are living outside of Oregon, or you are living in Oregon but just don't feel like you have the time or capacity to petition, donating to help pay for our paid petitioners is a great way to participate. Creation, you're helping, I think, create a movement that is hopefully embodying your own values, your own vision of the world. Protection, I certainly think that this is an initiative grounded in protecting the needs of animals, right? So we are getting our own need for nurturing met by protecting those that we are speaking on behalf of. Affection, hopefully you might know people in the campaign, or maybe even if you don't know any of us personally, you might still feel a sense of solidarity towards other animal rights activists, and donating is a way to meet that need to show affection for all of us in this movement together. And understanding, hopefully similar to how earlier I spoke about working on this campaign, often will meet my own need to be heard in a particular way. I hope that this campaign can similarly help you feel heard, help others feel heard, because it is quite a beautiful thing when we share what we want the world to look like and have others really imagine it with us. So thank you for watching and listening to that video. And if you are so compelled, convinced, then please consider going to yesonip28.org/donate and become a donor to our campaign. So thank you.